Welcome to the IRS Solution Attorney Show. If you have problems with the IRS, don't focus on the negative, focus on the solutions. With the IRS Solution Attorney, Darrin T. Mish. For over 15 years, he's been helping taxpayers with IRS problems reclaim their lives and their financial stability. Now, here's your host of the IRS Solution Attorney Show, Darrin T. Mish.
Good morning. This is the IRS Solution Attorney Show. I am the IRS Solution Attorney, Darrin T. Mish.
And I'm your co-host, Katrina Madewell. Welcome to the show today. Happy Thursday.
I'm like really amped up, and you're like all calm and mellow.
Me?
Yeah. Well
I'm
more mellow than
drinking
normal.
some cafe con leche,
Okay.
so give me about 10 minutes.
All right.
If that.
We have kind of an exciting show today.
I think so.
It would be like so stereotypical to do a show on, hey, the filing deadline is coming up. So I decided not to do a show on that.
It's coming.
It is coming. We'll do a show like that soon. It's coming.
We'll do it when it's too late for you to do anything about it. How's that sound?
Yeah, that sounds about right. But today's show is going to be about 15 ways to keep from freaking out when you owe the IRS more than you can afford to pay.
And that is right on time with your business model, because all of your clients have more than they can pay.
So, yeah, I mean, what I do.
But here, let's talk about where the idea for the show came, because sometimes I think that's the magic and the excitement in the show.
Sure, exactly. So the other day I caught an article on the businessinsider.com, and it really kind of caught my attention because the title of that article was 15 Scientific Tricks to Beat Stress, Anxiety, and Fear, and that was written by Baer and Shana Lebowitz. And, the reason that it caught my attention was because virtually every day, either one person or multiple people come into the office. I mean, and they have physical manifestations of stress wrapped around their tax problem. I mean,
They're sweating,
trembling sometimes, or some of the other things I see is maybe somebody who is extremely introverted. And I don't think that's their natural deal. I think it's just the nature of the situation. Yeah, the stress of the situation. Because let's face it, most people, attorneys don't have that really all that high of a, reputation in society. I mean, I think we're like a step above used car salesmen. No offense to used car salesmen or lawyers, actually.
I think we're right next to you in the real estate boat, so it's all right. But not all attorneys are created equal. And no, I have to say that because we've encountered many, many attorneys in my line of work. And some of them suck, just like real estate agents, and some of them are awesome. Like I would hire them in a minute if I had that problem.
Yeah, I think that's the reality of the situation is there's a stereotype because it's noteworthy when an attorney, commits fraud or steals money or whatever and goes to jail, ends up in the news and things like that. But our profession is so regulated. There's so many things. Do you know that we are not allowed under our ethical rules to actually speak a mistruth or make a misrepresentation in any aspect of our lives?
I believe it. So give me a stupid example. Or are you just at Disney? Anything with that?
No, like literally the rule, the ethical rule that you can be disciplined over is you cannot make any kind of misrepresentation. You can't tell your wife, hey, you look good in those pants. That's like technically.
But you're an attorney, so you can argue about anything, right?
Yeah, well,
like you have a point, a different opinion. That's the whole point.
For about 7 years after law school, and I've been out of law school for 25 years or something. And for 7 years after law school, I had a recurring nightmare that I wanted my old brain back because it's kind of like boot camp. They break you down and then they build you back up with this bizarre, like overly analytical thought process. And for 7 years, I had nightmares. Almost like, I want the old Darrin back. Well,
I never heard this story before.
So the old Darrin never did come back. He's just softer than he was when I was a younger attorney.
Well, they change your brain,
Yeah,
and
sure.
I've thought about that, and it's like, I don't think it would be good for me, like, to ever practice any area of law and go through that, because I already think enough like an attorney, and I can imagine what that would look like in the aftermath of that.
Well, when I was in law school, I specifically did not date because I did not want to marry an attorney because I was looking forward. I'm like, can you imagine two lawyers? And there's lots of couples that are lawyers that are married, and It works out great. But the way I was thinking was, can you imagine the arguments? You'd be like, on November 2nd, you said, isn't it true?
Those fights, you see like fireworks coming from the house.
You'd be cross-examining each other. It'd be great.
But so the topic of the show, going back to this, Darrin, you think about honestly, like some of the things that you hear a lot because you have a ton of podcasts, because we've been doing the show for quite a while now. You got a lot of videos and just a lot of information and content out there. And so your average client has what? Probably several $100,000 in tax
I'd say
debt.
the average client probably owes, north of $100,000.
Okay.
He's missing a few tax returns.
Right. So they owe $100,000 plus in taxes and they're missing, they haven't filed in who knows how long. And so it's not uncommon for you to hear when they come into the office, hey, I was up all night watching your videos.
Yeah, I was telling you that in the studio earlier before the show, and it kind of makes me laugh because I feel sorry for those people. They watch 5 hours of me on YouTube or whatever.
Yeah, something that took you months or years to create.
Yeah, exactly. And they're like, yeah, you were younger in some of those videos. I'm like, yeah, because I actually was a lot younger in some of those videos.
That is funny. But, with the gray beard comes experience.
Exactly.
His beard's really not gray, but.
Well, it is naturally.
Heather
but anyway,
it.
Moving right along. So the first tip that we're going to share with you is, and a lot of people are going to be like, duh. Okay. But it's breathe deeply because it lets your nervous system know that it can chill out. I mean, deep breathing is really helpful. And we're talking about some people come into the office. I mean, they literally almost cannot communicate. And I have no negative feelings towards them. All I want to do is sort of, and this is corny, but I'm sincere. All I kind of want to do is figuratively wrap them in a hug and say, look, this is going to be okay. We just have to deal with this.
Right.
And it makes me kind of sad.
Here's the thing, even with your kids, right? If they get stressed out or whatever, what do you tell them? Breathe. Mm-hmm. Come on. Like I've stopped my kids and all right, come on, let's breathe. Like, just taking those deep breaths in and out. Like it'll relax your brain, your mind. You can speak clearly and think clearly. It's the oxygen to the brain thing. And
psychologists say that helps us kind of sort out that fight or flight response that we have. And, when we're in a stressful situation, what our minds and bodies want to do is it wants to decide, am I going to fight or am I going to run?
Right.
And that goes back to like caveman days when you had a tiger chasing you.
Right.
And you had to make that decision.
Or if you're doing anything hard, like even at the gym, like how many times do you hear people just literally breathing hard? And it's because what they're doing is hard. They're trying to just get through that. And there's a lot of focus on, just the breath and paying attention to the moment and getting through it.
And I think breathing is like the core of meditation and
yoga
and things like that. And so when you do this deep breathing, it takes you out of that fight or flight kind of response mechanism where your body's trying to make that decision and it calms you down. It's like, okay, we can actually deal with this. We're breathing. We're not drowning. Everything's working. We're fine. And so I would say that would be number one tip. It's just take a deep breath, try to relax and try to get over like the immediate panic of the situation.
Right.
And I'm sure that would come in handy when you get that letter from the IRS. When you get that audit letter in the mail, that has got to be just a terrible feeling.
I'm sure you wish you could just put a sticker on the outside of the envelope that says just breathe or play a little song.
I wish I could put a sticker on the outside of the envelope that said, don't even open this, just call Darrin.
1-800
we'll
get Mish.
We'll open it together.
Or 888 get Mish. But, number two, thinking about this, and this is interesting, and I had a conversation this morning with one of my agents, and we were talking about being uncomfortable. And there's a lot that can be said for any aspect of your life with being uncomfortable. And that's pretty much what number two talks about.
Well, I believe that we're either growing or dying. There's only two options here in life in terms of business development and professional development, especially, and personal development. You're either growing or dying. So you have to be uncomfortable to grow. It's just part of the deal. Remember when you were a kid? My kids have them. You have leg pains. They have leg cramps and stuff like that. It's because they're growing. I mean, that's exactly 1-to-1 correlation. So this tip is slowly expose yourself to the things you're afraid of so that they're no longer unfamiliar to you. So if you're super afraid of your tax situation, maybe you should get some education. That would be a way to expose yourself.
Right, because we talked, it's fear of the unknown, right? Most of the time, that's exactly what it is. It's fear of the unknown, which is why people hesitate and that's with anything, right? If you don't know what to expect, that's what makes it hard.
Yeah, because what we fear as humans is the unknown. I can tell you every time I experience, intense anxiety, it's because
you don't know what's going to happen next.
I don't really know what's going on.
Pat's shaking like some tax forms at us.
It's probably his tax return where he's getting a gigantic refund.
It looked like a W-2 to me. What was that, Pat?
That was my W-2. When we
that's
go on
right.
a break, I'm going to show you why I'm heartbroken.
Oh, no. You work here for the insurance. Remember that, Pat?
Right.
All right. So number 3, recognize when you're scumbling to misplace anxiety and let it go. Make like Elsa and let it go. You love that?
I could try and sing that, but it would be terrible.
Come on, Pat. That's your cue. Get the music going. Come on. You're slacking.
So, this is a little bit more obtuse, right? I mean, it's just when we're experiencing anxiety in one part of our life, then it has a tendency to spill over into other things. And that's why tax problems are so damaging to people, is because if you have this underlying sort of tax stress that's going on, has a tendency to spill over into your workplace, into your relationships, how you deal with your spouse, how you deal with your kids, everything. I mean, we've all experienced that, right? This morning, I was actually stressed out about something. My son came out this morning. It was in the dark and stuff, and he walked out and he kind of surprised me, and I kind of snapped at him. And he's like, "Geez, what's wrong with you?" Well, what was wrong with me is I was like stressed out about something else. It was totally unrelated to what he was trying to do, which was just something nice,
That's funny. Maybe our kids talked this morning because Annalisa came in and scared the bejesus out of me. I jumped. I was just quiet. I was in my calm space, and she came in like, "Bah!" And I was like, "Bah!"
Well, when you live out in the middle of nowhere in the woods and somebody like comes out of the dark.
Oh my God, in your house, I can't even imagine how bad that might be. No, just kidding. You're listening to the IRS Solution Attorney Show. Hanging out today with me, Katrina Madewell, and Darrin Mish, your IRS Solution Attorney. And today's topic is all about 15 ways to keep from freaking out when you owe the IRS more than you can afford to pay or for anything in life. We'll be back in just a minute.
Welcome back to the IRS Solution Attorney Show. I am the IRS Solution Attorney, Darrin T. Mish.
And I'm your co-host, Katrina Madewell. And I think we figured out during the break why we didn't get that Elsa music. Just kidding.
I'm starting. You're on Facebook right now. Pretty soon people are going to see a GoFundMe page on Facebook.
So we're talking about how radio does not pay well?
Yeah, we're the butt of Pat's, shenanigans and jokes all the time. So today he's a little bit of the butt of the joke. He showed us his W-2, and it's a little bit sad.
But she got insurance, hey.
Yeah.
It's not Obamacare, right?
How's that Obamacare thing working out for you?
Oh. Where you saw, I can't even afford that.
So the topic of today's show is 15 ways to keep from freaking out when you owe the IRS more money than you can afford to pay.
That'll never happen with me.
Probably not, based on what I just saw. But
I don't know. He does. So he runs a hot dog cart.
Okay, so listen, we have 15 tips. If we keep cutting up, we're not going to get through them all. So tip number 4 is, again, kind of obvious, but going back to the original article that was a source of this show today, is spend time with friends and because social support reduces anxiety. So a lot of times when you have tax debt, it has a tendency to be really isolating. Like you think you're the only one that has a tax problem or could owe money to the IRS. I've heard that countless times over the years. People come in and they say, "Wait a minute, there's other people like me?" I'm like, "Yeah, you're on the small side." In fact, yesterday I was talking to a gentleman.
So do you ever tell them at that point that you had a tax problem at some point?
Oh, yeah, I tell them because it helps them feel better.
Isn't it interesting how that comes full circle? Because originally, like when I had you on my show as a guest, you did not want to talk about that.
No, I really didn't.
And getting uncomfortable is now in your comfort zone. And then so what happens is the people that come in, they go, "Oh, he's like me."
Yeah, I've had 2 or 3 tax problems in the past and kind of had to navigate through them. One of them was actually even after I was the IRS Solution Attorney guy. You know what I mean? Like I already knew what I was doing, and I still generated a problem. But the good news was I knew how to solve it, so I went ahead and solved it myself. But yesterday there was a gentleman in the office, and I think he owed around $50,000. So it's not not a ton of money in my world, at least, in terms of dealing with people with tax problems.
But for him, it's probably the biggest problem he has.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he was in his 70s and retired and living on Social Security.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
And I was able to share with him. He thought he was alone. I'm the only person that's ever done this. No, you're not the only person. And I was able to share with him, I think my average client is, 100, 200 grand. And really yours is very manageable. In that particular situation, he had a pretty short statute of limitations. So we really didn't do business together because it was like, here's your solution. Just keep doing what you're doing, and in a couple of years, it'll be over. So he loved that. He actually might be watching on Facebook Live. I'm not really sure.
And you have, I sent you a client too that we're working with right now as well. And the same thing happened for them, right? They basically have an old tax thing that's, it's run its course, it's expired, and you're going to be able to get that lien release. Yeah,
we're working on that lien release. I think it should come through any day now. And that should allow them to close on that house.
Yep. Exactly. So it's still showing up on credit, and it's one of those things where the score is rebounded. It's no longer collectible because the client actually called the IRS and they pretty much hung up on them, like wouldn't talk to them. And I said, all right, I'm going to send you to somebody that can help you out. And so for you said those are easy.
Yeah. If you know the secrets, right? If you know the magic, secrets, and if you're kind of on a semi first name basis with the people who do that kind of work, then it's not really all that challenging. Although we haven't done a show on liens in a while. there's a trend where the IRS wants to issue a release to a federal tax lien, but they don't want to pay the $6 to have it recorded in the county where it belongs.
So are you getting it and recording it?
So you know what an unrecorded release is? It's nothing. It's a valueless piece of paper that means absolutely nothing.
But anybody can record anything, right? So you guys are getting it and recording it?
In some Florida counties, they will not allow just a citizen, a normal person, to record something from the IRS. So
but will they allow you?
No, they won't. So then we have to go back to the IRS. Hey guys, can you record this? And then, then they'll eventually do it. But the funny thing is do you think it costs the government more or less than $6 to do it twice?
Oh God, how much do the hourly people make? Way more than $6.
Yeah. So,
I mean, they're touching that for at least an hour.
Yeah. It's just, that's preposterous, but that's the situation that we are in. And the federal government goes through swings where we have these just trends, and you can tell it's from management. Somebody somewhere has decided we're not going to do it the old way. We're going to do it this new way. And then as practitioners and lawyers and whatnot, we have to fight through that and get them back to let's do it the way that works. And not
reminds me of HOA communities with the homeowners every time there's a new change in the board people. Just kidding. Anyway.
I do not miss the HOA.
I bet you don't.
I do not miss that.
All right. So should we mention the book Friendfluence and how the benefits of having long friendship kind of ties into number 4?
Yeah. It basically, that book stands for the proposition that having friends allow us to live longer and happier lives. And I think that kind of goes into the no kidding kind of
companionship. Yes, for sure.
It's like if you're isolated and you're, all alone, then you're probably not going to be as happy and you're probably going to die earlier.
So maybe someone's takeaway from today's show, if they don't have IRS or tax debt, is to reconnect with an old friend.
Absolutely. Or family. Just don't. If you have problems, I don't think you should withdraw. It's the natural sort of human thing to do. It's like go in your cave and hide. But I don't think that that's necessarily the right thing to do.
Right.
It's never worked for me. All
right. So number 5 is exercise to protect yourself against the effects of stress, which include anxiety and fear.
Yeah. I don't exercise as regularly as I'd like, but I can tell you this. When I do exercise, I don't feel as stressed. And my body, although it might be muscle sore, doesn't feel as inflamed, cranky, creaky sort of sore.
So I have to be totally transparent about this because the way that I was raised when I was brought up, we did not exercise regularly. We did not do any of that. So it was foreign to me and I hated it. I couldn't stand getting up early. And with my schedule, if I don't do it first thing in the morning, it just does not happen. I either get too busy, something else happens, I'm too tired. There's always something. It's not an excuse. It's just the way it is. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, all right, well, how am I going to fix this? Well, I go to the gym at 7:30 in the morning and I do that 3 days a week. So scheduled. And those 3 days, when I go to the gym and I come back, 30-minute workout, I'm ready to go. I'm pumped. I'm always more productive on those days that I've been to the gym.
I can't quote the source of this study that I saw someplace, right? But that basically stood for the proposition that if you exercise, you actually become smarter. And I think I can believe that. Because it allows
your endorphins moving, everything just moves faster,
and it kind of has a tendency to free that clutter, which is why I go out on my farm on the weekends and I cut brush and I just do physical things because I don't want a cell phone attached to my face or my ear, and I just want to kind of go do something that doesn't require a lot of thought.
Well, you've got to have that. I mean, in my line of work too, we're constantly connected. Which is why if I didn't take that one day off to recharge and totally disconnect and not look at my phone, I would not be in this career this long.
Yeah, literally every week when we pull up and I see you pull up in the parking lot, you're on the telephone. Every single week. So you probably use that commute time to the studio on Thursday mornings and Friday mornings for you that to just make phone calls and whatnot.
Absolutely.
I actually feel blessed. I don't have to make quite that many phone calls.
I get it from all angles. It's text, it's messages, it's Facebook posts. It's everywhere. But, it comes with the territory. So I really don't mind it. And people that have been around me long enough know that sometimes when I get into my day, it's kind of busy. So if they call me early, 7-something in the morning, they're going to get me.
All right. So let's move on to tip number 6. And that's to reframe anxiety as excitement so you can devote more energy and resources to the situation. Now, I don't think this one is common sense.
I was going to say, how do you reframe anxiety as excitement? What does that even look like? Or sound like or feel like?
Well, emotions happen at 2 levels. There's the physical sensation, and that's called arousal in the psych world. And then the way that you mentally interpret it, and that's called valence, I guess. When you're anxious, your heart rate goes up. That's high arousal, and you read it as bad news, and that's negative valence. So the takeaway is, if you're anxious, try to reframe it as excitement. I'll tell you, in my personal life, if I'm anxious and then I can get a little education and I can feel hopeful and then I can devise a plan, then I can actually psych myself up because I can just bang it out. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If I can get educated enough to where I can make even a rudimentary plan, then I can chunk it down to steps, and I'm okay. First thing I got to do is this. Second thing I got to do is that. And sometimes you can't even get beyond the first step or the second step, right? You're like, okay, my plan is I'm going to start with step 1, and then what I learned from step 1 will tell me what to do next.
Right.
And so that's how I would frame that.
And some of it's just starting, but it's funny. I'm looking at this reframe anxiety with excitement, and sometimes my head is so full and I got 15 million things going through my head that I think my anxious is my excitement and my anxiety. They're like all in one. Because the only time I really ever get anxious is when I feel like I can't move fast enough.
Okay, so I read a book called Getting Things Done. Have you ever read that
yes.
one? And what he tells you to do when you're feeling anxious because you've got too many things to do is he says, okay, what you got to do is sit yourself in a quiet place and do a brain dump and get all those things that you want to get done. Yes. And you got to write them down on a piece of paper. I've done that exercise a couple times, and it's amazingly effective. Because when you look at it, and your list might be 2 pages long, right? But when you look at it, you're like, okay.
But you're more productive, too, because you can go check, line. Mm-hmm. It really does. And it's been a long time ago since I read that, but it should be a good reread for me now.
That's great. I think it's David Allen is the author of Getting Things Done.
Yeah, it's been a while. So number 7, and we'll get into this tip after the break, but it's prevent yourself from always focusing on negatives by looking at the big picture.
Absolutely.
And so we'll jump into number 7 and the rest of the tips and try and get through all 15 of these before the end of the show. I think we're doing okay.
I think we're doing okay, actually.
If you have a question for us or you'd like to chime in, you can get us here live in the studio at 888-404-1010. 888-404-1010. If you're listening on the AM dial, don't forget you can pick us up at 103.1 FM or also HD radio at 99.5 HD2. You're listening to the IRS Solution Attorney Show with Mr. Darrin Mish. I'm your co-host, Katrina Madewell. Stick around. We'll be back in just a minute.
Are you suffering from IRS problems? Do you owe back taxes you can't pay? Is your paycheck or bank account being levied? Or maybe you haven't filed tax returns in years and simply don't know what to do. This is Darrin T. Mish to tell you that if you're tired of IRS problems hanging over your head and are ready for a fresh start, we may be able to help. Call the law offices of Darrin T. Mish at 888-GET-MISH, 888-GET-MISH. I can help you file old tax returns, work to release tax liens or stop wage levies, even negotiate deals to pay off back taxes at a discount, sometimes for pennies on the dollar. Hey, let's face it, these days it's not hard to get into tax trouble. A divorce, failed business, health problems, you name it. The point is, IRS problems may be solved if you're willing to take the first step. Call for a free consultation at 888-GET-MISH. That's 888-438-6474. Or go to the web at getirshelp.com, because the one sure thing is, IRS problems don't solve themselves. So get Mish. 888-438-6474. Principal Office, Tampa. Welcome back to the IRS Solution Attorney Show. I happen to be the IRS Solution Attorney, Darrin T. Mish.
I can verify he is. I'm your co-host, Katrina Madewell. Thank you for sticking with us or joining us or popping into the conversation. We are glad you're here in the Money Talk 1010 family. Thank you for joining in. And if you have a comment for today's show, you'd like to talk to us, catch up with us, you got a suggestion for a great topic, we would love to hear it. And you can reach out to Darrin directly at 888-GET-MISH.
Or you can visit the website at getirshelp.com. There's a number of websites, actually. We have a YouTube channel. We have a podcast. We have an app. There's all kinds of ways to reach out to me. I would say that, or Facebook as well.
Twitter.
IRS Solution Attorney. I don't spend a whole lot of time on Twitter, but
But Matt will probably catch that.
I spend a ridiculous amount of time on Facebook. Today's show is basically 15 ways to keep from freaking out when you owe the IRS more money than you can afford to pay, which is pretty common in my practice since all I deal with is tax problems. And so we thought we'd do a show about how to just kind of, this is informal, but, chill a little bit.
How to not freak out.
Because if you're freaking out, you're actually not moving the ball forward. You're just you're just hiding and, you're just waiting for the ball to drop. And usually that's not a good solution with the IRS.
And really, if somebody's listening now and they're stressed out about anything at all,
these
tips are going to be right on time.
For sure. And probably most of the people in their cars that are listening to us are, in fact, stressed out about something because driving in the Tampa Bay area is not super fun.
And we usually are always streaming live on Facebook. So if you hop on over to Darrin's, did we figure out if your page is public or not, or do we know?
The page is in fact public, but we have some kind of technical challenge with posting it on the IRS
it's like
Solution
all
Attorney
hidden
page.
now.
So you have to you have to friend me at Darrin Mish.
But
Facebook.
If people can follow you and not have to friend you and see your stuff because it's open to the public, they can watch the show.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
absolutely.
So you can hop on over there and watch it as well. We got some people always watching in and out. So, number 7, let's hop back so we can get through all 15.
Prevent yourself from always focusing on the negatives by looking at the big picture. And I can tell you from personal experience that this was very helpful for me when I was going through kind of a bad time in my life. I had a situation a few years ago where I don't know if you've ever experienced this, where you have multiple big deals happening.
It's always that way, isn't it?
Happening.
It's not one thing, it's a bunch.
It's not like one business thing. It's like 5 business things, and then you throw a personal thing in there, maybe a health thing, and it just seems like everything's just kind of crashing in on you, and it's real easy to kind of succumb to depression and just kind of inwardly retreat. And it's a really bad idea. I can remember the day that I was all wrapped up in self-pity, and I was feeling bad about everything that was going on. And I was looking in the mirror, and I started talking to the mirror. And I was like, I pointed at myself in the mirror. I'm like, you're the problem, dude. Like, you need to fix this, and you need to start looking at the bright side, and you need to start being grateful. So I think the point of this tip is everybody, even the guy living on the street, has something to be grateful for. And so that's what you need to focus on is focus on gratitude. Focus on what's going well. Don't let even if you have 7 bad things going on financially,
there's something good.
You've got a full belly, right? You got a place to sleep at night. You probably are in relatively good health. You probably have family that loves you. I mean, everybody has something that they can focus on.
Give you a perfect example. I have a lady, sold her house probably, 3 or 4 years ago. And I got a call from her yesterday. And, she always had kind of a crazy schedule. She's a medical assistant. And she had a little boy. I knew that. He's about 3. Single mom. And she says, hey, I was, taking care of my son. He missed several days. When I came back, they fired me. So she lost her job. And she's like, I don't think I've been there for 11 years. I don't think I can get, the same amount of pay that. So what we did was we actually just talked her through that. And sometimes people, I think, need that. They need somebody to kind of say, all right, let's take this horrible thing and figure out how we're going to make it work. So she called me actually about selling her house. But the bright side of it is she's going to have enough equity to go pay cash for something small.
There you go.
And had she have not been a homeowner and she was always a renter, that opportunity wouldn't have been there. And so as we were talking through that, we actually realized that, maybe you should go back into the school system and be a medical assistant so you can have the same schedule as your son. And for her, she's like, that would be heaven. And I said, I know you and your personality enough to know that you wouldn't make this decision on your own. So sometimes that step back is actually 3 or 4 steps forward.
And that goes back to tip 4, which is, get back into your social circle, get back with your friends, because
talk to somebody.
People that care about you are going to give you advice. You don't always have to take their advice because sometimes it's not good advice. But in your case, it sounds like that was pretty good advice. Did it work out?
Oh, she just pretty much, she's prepping the house now. It's going to be live in a week or so. And, she's going to pay cash for something else. So it will definitely work out.
I think this is a pretty good time to buy and sell. Mostly sell.
Great time to sell, let me tell you. Yeah. If you've got a house to sell, call me because we have sold everything that we have. I have 0 inventory left, and I can promise you I will sell it for top dollar.
So tip number 8 is, a few times every day, if you're going through a lot of stress, just stop and recognize that at this moment, everything's fine.
It goes back to gratitude, right? Like find something to be grateful for.
Well, there's a new neuropsychologist named Rick Hansen, and he says in a column that he writes in Psychology Today that our human instincts of survival make us constantly unsettled and fearful, protecting us against ever completely letting our guard down. So I think that, again, goes back to our almost prehistoric ancestors, right? So you're in the cave, and the fire's gone out, and now you're worried that there's a bear or a wolf is going to come in and eat you. Okay. And I think that we're really hardwired still very much like that. I actually feel like this a lot where, everything's fine now, but ... what if?
Well, here's the thing. There's a lot to be said even for NLP. And as soon as you use the word but, you've erased everything you just said. When you just said everything is fine, but, well, guess what? That's all you're hearing is what you said after the but. So replace that but with an and see what happens.
But I can tell you on a personal level, if I combat that, if I fight that, if I'm aware of that and I don't allow myself to succumb to those negative thoughts, then everything tends to work out much better.
It's interesting. I'm sure you've seen me grow as a person and as a professional in the time you've known me, and the same thing for you. When I first met you, you even told me it was like one of your worst times ever.
Yeah.
And I had approached you to come on my show as a guest, and you were like, what is this radio thing? I don't want to do this.
Yeah, I was not going through a good time professionally or personally, and my gut reaction was, just it's like out of my comfort zone. I just don't want to deal with this. And something that just told me, like, dude, you have to be out of your comfort zone to grow. So I went on, the air with you, and
I was likable. So he said, okay, and here we are.
She's relatively likable. It all worked out actually really well. It was a blessing, and I consider you one of my great friends now. So.
Same here. You got to look for those opportunities. They're always there, no matter what you're succumbing to at that moment. So tip number 9 is realize that not everything is the end of the world. And one way to do this is by consciously trivializing tasks. And I gotta say, like the sky is falling. Those people make me nuts. Like I try not to be around them.
I saw a meme.
It's toxic.
Of course. So this is the great authority, right? I saw a meme on Facebook last night that actually, goes to this point really well. It said something like, if what you're worrying about today is not going to matter in 5 years, don't spend more than 5 minutes worrying about it.
That's pretty right on time. I mean, that's...
and I was obsessing over, what was happening with a particular client situation last night. And I was just going over and over and over and over. And I saw that. And I'm like, yeah, this is totally not going to matter in 5 years. I've given this way more than 5 minutes. I need to move on. It's really not that big a deal. And,
but I think it's human nature. Like we all want to please people. Most people do. They want people to be happy at the end of the day. So if you have anything unsettling, it's human nature.
Yeah. So what this, again, a social psychologist named Susan Perry suggests in her psychology column that you should always think of yourself as playing. So if something goes wrong, you just try again and try it in some other way. So that's really happening in our society with our smartphones and whatnot. If you've noticed, every app that you interact with a lot, there's some game aspect to it. Even Waze, the GPS app that I really use,
there's
pretty
points.
much. If I'm in the car, I'm using the thing. Yeah, you get points, and you can slaughter your friends in terms of how many points you can get, and then you get little icons, and you can if you
People
get over.
People are competitive by nature.
That's crazy.
Isn't that neat though? Like something as simple as a traffic driving app has a competitive sense to it.
Yeah, you get 6 points for saying there's a car parked on the shoulder of the road. So
they get a game.
Exactly.
That's what makes life fun. I think if you look at a lot of older people and just people that have had long lives. And just see how they interact in their day to day. You usually don't see like stressed or negative or like they're positive. They're grateful.
Because that stress it physically manifests itself and it'll kill you.
Definitely. All right. Number 10, affirm your core values before a challenging situation so you can remember what makes you unique.
Yeah. So you just have to figure out what you're about.
Everybody should start with their why. Like, why do you get up in the morning and do what you do? Why do you do it?
And if you're true to yourself and you're happy with who you are as a human, and you feel like everything the way you're behaving is entirely consistent with who you actually are or your best view of yourself, then I think you feel better about yourself. During that tough time that I was going through, when I was talking to myself in the mirror and pointing fingers and whatnot at myself.
You, that guy.
Yeah. I was, I said something like, you're not being the best version of you. And that's why things aren't going well. I had fallen. I'll admit this. I mean, this is kind of a public forum, right? I mean, right. I had fallen into the trap of everything that was going wrong was someone else's fault. And that was not working out for me.
I should have given you the book QBQ by John G. Miller.
Yeah, that was not working out for me. And so I was in that pattern for, 6 months or a year where none of this is my fault. And then that one day I'm like, no, wait a minute. This is not going to get better until you acknowledge that all of this is your fault.
Right. That's an excellent read. Have you ever read that? You've read QBQ.
No, I haven't. Actually, I'm going to write that down.
So add that to your list. If you are in this little rut where you're blaming somebody else, read that book by John Miller, QBQ. It's Question Behind the Question. And in that book, he teaches you to learn about self-accountability, self-responsibility. And even if you think it's somebody else's fault, you have a part in it.
Yeah. So I forgot.
It's an excellent read. I'm sorry to sidetrack you. I do it all the time. It's a normal for the show. So number 11, help others protect yourself from negative effects.
Let me circle back real quick to the statement that I made where I looked at myself in the mirror and I pointed the finger and I said, this is all your fault. And what I meant by that was, certainly there was key people in my life or professional life even that had let me down in a big way. And they did bear some blame. But my point in my comment was focusing on what they did wrong was not going to move me ahead. So it was my fault from the standpoint that either I didn't recognize that these possibilities could arise, or I was just too focused on pity to move along.
And to add to that, sometimes when these business relationships disappoint you or anything in life, sometimes they're people that you really shouldn't be connected to anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah.
And looking back, you're like, wow, I probably never should have had that relationship to begin with.
Yeah, if it wasn't serving me well, and I sometimes we just hold on too long. There are people, especially in professional situations, where you just need to move along.
It's funny because we've kind of gotten to this to where even my whole team knows I don't do toxic. It's like cancer in your organization or relationships or anything. And if you got that negative or people that are just distracting everybody, I would rather get rid of that one person than have it affect the whole team.
Absolutely.
So, all right, when we come back, we'll jump into number 11, which is helping others to protect yourself from negative effects of stress. Stick around. You're listening to the IRS Solution Attorney Show, and today is all about 15 ways to keep from freaking out when you owe the IRS more than you can afford. Back in just a moment.
Welcome back to the IRS Solution Attorney Show. I am the IRS Solution Attorney, Darrin T. Mish.
And I'm your co-host, Katrina Maid, while whacking myself in the freaking teeth with my headphones.
Well, that's not, in the last segment, I accidentally turned my volume up with you talking up to 9,000.
Oh, your poor eardrum.
Yeah, if you watch me on Facebook Live, you saw me jump out of my chair because it was startling. So today we're talking about the 15 things that... 15 ways to keep from freaking out when you owe the IRS more money than you can afford to pay. That's a mouthful. But anyway, that's what we're doing. That's what we're talking about. And tip number 11, we're going to have to kind of rush.
We're flying through the last 5. We've got to get through these
in just a few minutes. It's to, you need to help others to protect yourself from the negative effects of stress. And I can tell you in my life, this was really, and it continues to be really helpful. So what I do as an attorney is a very stressful thing, right? I mean, think about it. I fight the IRS for other people all day, 7 days a week.
With big problems that aren't yours.
More like 5 days a week. But anyway, all year, and have so for years. And they're big problems and they're complicated and they're stressful. Okay. And so the way that I actually, in part, combat stress is I really have embraced the idea of helping other people. Because there was a gentleman that came in yesterday. We decided not to do business with each other because he really doesn't need me. It would be overkill. It'd be like killing a no-see-em with a sledgehammer. Okay. Mm-hmm. You just don't need to do that. So, Which,
by the way, is a very good sign of a good attorney. And you can always tell, if you get an attorney that says, oh, you know what, really, you could hire me and I could take your money, but you should just do this because this will serve you well.
Yeah, and I believe in treating people the way I would like to be treated now. It's not exactly perfect system, but it's pretty darn close. So I treated this gentleman with a great deal of respect and kindness, told him exactly what I thought he should do, which didn't involve him paying me any money and involved him paying the IRS no money. So he liked that answer. And at the end of that appointment, I was actually happy. And now I would have, there's part of me that would have been happier if I had got a big fee, but I still felt really good because I helped this guy, and there really isn't anything in it for me other than just karma, right?
Birds of a feather flock together. So the likelihood of him knowing someone else with tax, that's pretty good. I'm just saying.
Exactly. And we kind of hit it off, and we decided to follow each other on Facebook and stuff like that. And so we're going to develop some sort of relationship, even if it's just sort of like a social media, friend kind of relationship. And that's how we get business. It's referrals and through people listening to the radio show. And
number 12, which I can't wait to talk about, drink coffee regularly because it may help you manage stress. I don't think you drink coffee. So I'll drink your coffee for you, Darrin.
According to this study, apparently, they've done, tests on mice and stuff, and they say that if you give mice enough caffeine, they don't stress out as much, I guess.
But I love the part that says too much caffeine at one time has the potential to make us anxious or jittery. I think I was exempt from that part because I can literally drink espresso and go to sleep.
I'm actually super sensitive to caffeine, and there's actually such a thing as caffeine overdose, and that's when you get the super jitters and you're like,
never had it in my life
and stuff like that. Oh, I have. It's not necessarily a pleasant thing. So tip number 13 is practice mindfulness meditation to reduce anxiety, depression, and pain.
Kind of loops back to number 1, right? But definitely.
Yeah, it's like, yoga and just kind of meditate and chill out, because if you really were to focus in an objective manner for any length of time at all on your problems, most of us are going to decide our problems aren't really that catastrophic.
And looping back a moment ago, we were talking, number 14 is talk to yourself to perform.
Yeah.
And we didn't read on down the outline, but this was right
No,
here.
I had forgotten that was on here, but I do that a lot. And you cannot talk to yourself negatively. If you talk to yourself negatively, what do you think is going to happen?
What you think about, you talk about. What you talk about, you bring about.
And that's, yeah, exactly. And that's why we have to be careful around our kids too. And you don't want to put your kids down, because that becomes their self-talk for the rest of their lives in a lot of cases.
All right. So real quick, number 15, and we'll post more details on your site. Embrace the potential advantages of stress, and you'll be more likely to learn from the struggle.
This probably sounds bizarro to some people, right? So what are the advantages of stress? Well, I tell entrepreneurial people, small business owners all the time, that we make as much money as we need, not as much as we want, but as much as we need. So sometimes you have to put pressure, some stress. Pressure is another word for stress. You have to put some pressure on yourself to perform better so that you can internalize that need to make more money. So in my practice's case, if you're the small business owner that just never pays taxes because you never have enough money, as soon as you internalize that need to pay your taxes as you go along, I've had very few people disagree with the fact that you will make the extra money, because that's what business owners do.
Train kept rolling all night long. There's our train. It's time for our train wreck of the week.
This is the segment of the show that's really one of my favorites. It's the IRS train wreck of the week. This is the segment where we talk about somebody who came into the office and they were kind of a train wreck. They had a big problem with the IRS, owed a lot of money. And
they're all a train wreck.
Yeah, and after we got done with them, they ended up smelling like a rose. So in this particular case, it was really an interesting case. I've said this on the show many times, that smaller cases are actually more difficult to settle with the IRS quite often than larger cases. And the reason is there's a statute of limitations of 10 years. So the IRS only has a set amount of time to get the money. So if I'm trying to argue to the IRS that over this 10-year period, in this case, my client couldn't pay $19,253, it's kind of a hard sell. For a lot of, like most people could pay $19,000 over 10 years.
Most people could sell a car or something to pay $19,000.
Exactly. But in this particular case, it was a retired Asian gentleman. And the only reason I bring that up is so you can kind of visualize. He's frail and really soft-spoken. And there was a lot of, I think, shame and anxiety and embarrassment wrapped up in the fact that he had this tax problem.
What was the tax firm? Was it like business, Chinese, restaurant, didn't pay taxes?
Boy, that's a stereotype.
No, well, I didn't mean it like that.
No, I don't remember. It was income tax. I forget.
Some type of annual return tax.
It was probably an early withdrawal from a 401k because it was just 1 year, and it was $19,253. We sat down. We analyzed his appropriateness for an offer and compromise, which is where you make a deal to settle for less. And we decided to file that offer and compromise. And I went aggressive on this one. I offered $50. $50.
I got to start calculating these percentages.
Now, I do have friends around the country that will offer as little as $1 or $20. I've done one for $20 before. But typically in cases like this, I'll offer $250 or $500 because I just don't want to have the argument with the IRS that it's not enough, But in this particular case, I thought that his finances, he was living on fixed income. I think it was Social Security only, and had no assets. And he was in his 70s. So I just went for it. I offered $50. Well, the other day we got an envelope in the mail from the IRS, and I can kind of tell just from what the envelope looks like what's inside, because I've been doing this a long time. And it's kind of thicker, and I can tell if it's from that address and it's kind of thick, it's an offer acceptance or a rejection. We don't get as many rejections as acceptances. So I ripped the envelope open, and it was on this particular case. And they had settled that case for $50 with 0 questions. I never spoke to anybody from the IRS. I never had to provide updated financials. We filed the offer. It came back accepted for $50. This is rare. It's happened about 2 or 3 times in my career, but it does happen sometimes. So pretty neat story. I was really happy for him, and when I called him,
I bet he was happy.
He was really happy, and he was
happy to hear from you.
He was borderline tearful, and he was just really happy to have them.
So you get the letters first, right? Because you represent them as their attorney. Usually, you see that.
Well, they get the letters too, but since I'm at work and we get our mail early in the day, typically I get the mail before.
And they probably don't want to open their mail, or you have to.
A lot of times people don't even know what it means. So my favorite job at the office is to make those phone calls. Hey, we won. Now my least favorite calls are, it didn't go so well.
We got to fix it. We got a new plan B.
Yeah, but my favorite calls are when I get to call the client and say, hey, your offer was accepted at $50. I mean, how cool is that? So.
Well, if you have a tax problem or an IRS issue, or you got a question and you think Darrin's your guy, you can get him at 888-GET-MISH. I'm pretty sure he'll be able to help you.
You can visit the website at getirshelp.com. You can visit our YouTube channel, which is the IRS Solution Attorney. You can visit...
and likely, we've already done a show, or you have a video out there that can answer the question.
We've probably done multiple shows on your particular question that you have. We're kind of running out of ideas here.
Be like most people and, get the answer on your own without having to talk to anybody. That's what people want to do.
Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. We have lots of books on sale that I've written on Amazon.com as well. So there's lots of ways to check me out.
Give us an idea for a show. We would love to hear from you. You can call Pat George. He's back there at 888-404-1010. You don't have to talk to us. You can talk to Pat. He's more fun anyway. 888-404-1010, and he'll make your day great, I'm sure. Let him know if you see any traffic incidents, or if you got a topic or an idea for myself or Darrin. We love that you're here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us on the Money Talk 1010